Versatile Mage. Chapter 666. The Bridges of Death. The group of four fell silent. As they were struggling on how to make the decision, they were unaware of the copper mirror on a boulder behind them. As long as there was a wicked eye copper mirror in the area, the people from the villages could observe it through the mirror. As a result, the people in the clock tower were aware of the situation they were in, too. The truth was, the problem that Mo Fan and his crew had encountered had left the authorities in silence, too. They were extremely worried on their behalf, yet their hearts were burning with anxiety for the city. What is there to think about? Just take a bridge each. The odds of 50% are good enough. Chu Jia, an elder of the Hunter Union, broke the silence. How he wished that he could transmit his voice into the group's ears. That's easy for you to say. They have made a huge sacrifice just by being willing to jump into the dark abyss, and now, they have to choose if they are going to die alone or together, said Du Xiao, who was relatively more sentimental. But don't they know the burden they're carrying on their shoulders? Said Chu Jia. That's because of how useless we are, that we have to place this huge burden on the shoulders of these young magicians. No matter what they choose, we should respect them. I believe neither determination nor their urge to save the world was the reason that brought them so far. In fact, it's the never-changing friendship between them, facing anything fearlessly as long as they're together. It's difficult to move forward when you're all by yourself, said Du Xiao in a deep voice. Nobody would be more familiar with the feeling than him. He was all by himself the moment he became a senior hunter. The glory, the determination, and the ambition suddenly became meaningless. Du Xiao could understand the feelings that the group was experiencing. He hoped that the authorities would not try to judge them with their skewed sense of morality and righteousness. They had already sacrificed themselves when they jumped into the dark abyss. Either staying together or splitting up, nobody else had the right to condemn them. Mo Fan has come to the ancient capital because of Zhang Xiaohou. I heard that he was in the middle of the nomination battles, said Yao Nan. Su Xiaoluo saved Zhang Xiaohou's life. I think that girl jumped into the dark abyss because of Mo Fan. Man, I would have a mental breakdown if I was in their shoes. Yeah, the burden is too heavy, it's suffocating. The bridges of death, the bridge of life. The 10 bridges extended into the darkness, swaying slightly as they were blown by the black wind. It felt like any of the bridges would lead them to death or endless darkness. Regardless of the final decision, their hearts were in pain, as if a knife was twisting in them. Zhang Xiaohou looked at Mo Fan. He could not decide at all. He was willing to sacrifice himself, yet if he was told to pick a bridge and watch Mo Fan and Su Xiaoluo pick the other bridges that would separate them eternally, it was no different than killing him right on the spot. He had only jumped in here because he did not want to lose the two most important people in his life. He had already experienced the sense of losing someone. He was not willing to experience it again. Brother Fan, I'll follow your decision, said Zhang Xiaohou after taking a deep breath. Zhang Xiaohou could not make the decision. His only urge was to choose Mo Fan, choosing to believe him completely. Mo Fan was silent for a long time. He was staring at the 10 bridges, as if he was trying to detect any clue from them. However, the bridges were exactly the same, as if they would all lead him to the same destination. Fang Gu, is the death from picking the wrong bridge inevitable? Asked Mo Fan sternly. Mo Fan was unable to remain optimistic in the current situation. The impact of his decision was too bizarre. There was no way he could make the decision easily, when it would either decide the fate of the city, or separate him from his friends forever. Maybe it's only deadly to us. I believe that the dark abyss, even if it can murder a ruler-level creature, isn't necessarily a death zone, either. I believe a forbidden magician could enter and leave as they wished, too. As for the bridge of life, it won't necessarily guarantee our safety, either. Who knows? The old ancestor on the Blood Emperor throne might actually be scarier than anything else, said Fang Gu. Mo Fan's eyes glittered when he heard Fang Gu's words. It seemed like he had made up his mind. Mo Fan looked at Lu Ru, who avoided his eyes. She spoke before Mo Fan could ask. I'll listen to you. I'll do whatever you say. Mo Fan nodded and pointed at one of the bridges. We'll take this bridge, together. Fang Gu was slightly confused when he heard Mo Fan's decision. He could not understand why Mo Fan would make such a decision. It was obvious that splitting up and taking 5 bridges would significantly increase the odds. Was Mo Fan really that cold to the millions of lives in the city? Are you sure? I just don't understand why we must obey the rules. No matter how astonishing the capabilities of the man who died more than 2,000 years ago are, there would still be times when he was buried or defeated. Picking the wrong bridge doesn't mean we are going to die, replied Mo Fan. Fang Gu was stunned when he heard those words. He said with a wry smile, I agree with you, but whether you are strong enough to overcome the situation is a totally different story. Mo Fan shrugged, it doesn't matter, I just don't feel like following a dead man's rules. We will face it together. We'll either live, or die together. Mo Fan was already making his move. It was better to proceed forward than to waste their time further here. It would give them more time to resolve the danger, even if they chose the wrong bridge. That's fine, but I won't be taking the same bridge. Good luck, said Fang Gu. The authorities had grim looks on their faces. They did not want Mo Fan and his crew to take the same bridge. It would give them the lowest odds. They were relieved when Fang Gu decided to take a bridge himself, increasing the odds from 10 to 1 to 5 to 1. A fifth, there was still hope. They could only pray that heaven would bless the ancient capital. The group of 4 slowly ventured into the darkness as they proceeded forward on the White Arch Bridge. As they turned around and glanced backward, the platform had already disappeared. The path ahead was in pitch-black darkness, while the howls of the black wind came from behind. It felt like they were walking on a bridge hanging in the air. They would fall into the abyss at any second. Why is there nothing here? Su Xiaoluo began to panic. She was from the villages, thus she did know about the 9 bridges of death and 1 bridge of life. She did not have Mo Fan's courage to challenge the rules. She only felt like they were surely going to die if they had chosen the bridge of death. Will it work if we turn back here? Lu Ru asked softly. Most likely not. The ancient king is the master of the space element. I think there was no return the moment we stepped on the bridge, said Zhang Xiaohou. I've already tried it. It's useless, said Mo Fan. Brother Fan, I thought you were walking forward quite confidently, said Zhang Xiaohou. Confident my ass. We still haven't reached the altar yet. I'm afraid this is most likely the bridge of death. Buckle up. We have to stay calm no matter what happens. I don't believe any of the rules the dead man has set. I believe that unity is strength, said Mo Fan. Chapter N. Versatile Mage. Chapter 667. Raining Undead. The bridge was shrouded in darkness. The group felt more nervous as they proceeded forward. The worst part was, Mo Fan and his crew had no idea if they had chosen the bridge of life or the bridge of death. It felt like there was no end to the bridge. Mo Fan had enough of how the Qin Emperor had designed his tomb. Why did the dead man make everything feel like an endless loop? They had spent quite some time on the bridge, yet not a single sound was to be heard. If it was the bridge of death, hurry up and send the demons and monsters over. What was the point of making the bridge so long? Mo Fan cursed continuously in his heart. The funny thing was, something silver did appear ahead, as if the ancient king could hear Mo Fan's grumbling. Mo Fan gradually approached and they could make out a silver mirror. The mirror looked extremely weird. It was somehow standing on the bridge, with silver ripples on its surface. It simply looked like a portal connected to another world. Brother Fan, look behind you, said Zhang Xiaohou suddenly. Mo Fan was still inspecting the strange silver mirror. He only turned around when he heard Zhang Xiaohou's words. He was nearly scared to death, as the arch bridge they were walking on before had suddenly disappeared. The disappearance of the bridge was not their main concern. The problem was, the black wind sickles were moving toward them at an increasing speed. Holy shit, what the heck? Cursed Mo Fan. The wind was getting closer. It did not give Mo Fan and the others any time to inspect the mirror further. They immediately grabbed one another's hands and rushed into the mirror after taking a deep breath. As they thought, the mirror was a space tunnel. The group of four was blown away by the turbulent flow of space as they drifted to somewhere unknown. Mo Fan felt extremely heavy-headed. He could only see himself surrounded by the void. If he had to describe the feeling, it was as if he was sliding down a smooth tunnel at a rapid pace. The motion kept spinning him around. Ah! 4 cries of fear came from a silver vortex that suddenly appeared high up in the air, before 2 men and 2 women were ejected from it and fell to the ground. The silver vortex was a certain distance away from the ground. They did not realize it at first, but as soon as they saw the ground was made of sturdy rocks, Zhang Xiaohou and Mo Fan immediately cast some spells. The group had a rough landing. The ground below their feet was sturdy, as hard as stone. The ground was gray. It was so dry that not a single plant could be spotted. The whole surface was filled with cracks. I don't think I can see the altar here. Su Xiaoluo's face turned pale as she scanned their surroundings. If they were not brought to the altar, it meant that they had taken the Bridge of Death. Another unique space. How many unique spaces did that guy actually put inside his own tomb? Mo Fan observed their surroundings and discovered that it was only a small, standalone space. The place was not spacious at all. They could see the curve of the sky when they raised their heads. They could also see the ends of the gray land. Is this some kind of cage designed for us to rot in here? Zhang Xiaohou had also discovered that there was nothing here apart from the land and the sky. No plants, no animals. They barely believed they were still alive somewhere when they saw lightning flickering across the sky at times. What shall we do now? Asked Lu Ru. It was obvious that they had taken the Bridge of Death that led them to this weird space. I read some books about the space element not long ago. A unique space like this must have an exit if it has an entrance. Therefore, there must be an exit somewhere if this place is a standalone space. A space with only an entrance but no exit is dead space. It's void, which simply means it doesn't exist, said Mo Fan. Zhang Xiaohou, Lu Ru, and Su Xiaoluo failed to understand him well. Mo Fan added when he saw the confused looks on their faces, anyway, a unique space like this must have an entrance and an exit. Don't worry, the group believed in Mo Fan. They picked a direction and proceeded that way. However, even though the gray land was still extending further ahead, they were unable to move forward, as if there was an invisible wall of space in front of them. Mo Fan tried to use magic. The fire burst was able to fly further into the distance, yet he still could not walk past it. He tried using fleeing shadow, but the outcome turned out the same. Let's choose a different direction. They went in a different direction and soon discovered something emitting a silver glow in the air. A silver realm, that must be the exit. Mo Fan was overjoyed. Every space had its rules. Mo Fan was confident that there was an exit, yet he did not expect to find it so quickly. The thing was not too far away. It was around 5 kilometers away. They just needed to go straight. There's something in the sky. Why is there a silver vortex? Lu Ru's sight was sharper than the rest. She immediately discovered something strange in the sky. Mo Fan raised his head and saw a silver vortex above them. It was floating with the clouds and seemed to be spinning slowly. Mo Fan had no clue what it was either, but they only had to make their way toward the exit since they had found it. Look, something is falling, yelled Lu Ru, pointing at the silver vortex. They are black. What are they? They are falling like rain, said Su Xiaoluo. Mo Fan was quicker in his thinking. When he saw the things falling from the silver vortex like tiny black raindrops, his expression immediately turned grim. They seemed like tiny raindrops from the current distance, but once they were standing under the silver vortex, their size would no longer be the same as raindrops. They are undead, shouted Lu Ru when she finally got a closer look at the things falling from the silver vortex. Undead. Heavens, so many of them. Su Xiaoluo's eyes were full of disbelief. She glanced at the land ahead. The things that landed on the ground soon rose to their feet and started walking around awkwardly. Undead. They were all undead. The rain falling from the silver vortex was actually raining undead. The zombies, skeletons, and phantoms were clustered together like raindrops. Similar to Mo Fan's group, it seemed like they had just been dragged into this unique space. Their hatred-filled eyes still looked confused. Chapter N. Versatile Mage. Chapter 668. The Space of Death. What did you say? A silver vortex has dragged away a large number of undead, said the mysterious man at the Clock Tower Magic Association in confusion. Why would there be a silver vortex all of a sudden? The group of people was dumbfounded. The outside of the barrier was either drenched from the rain or covered by an ocean of undead. What was this silver vortex? It's a turbulent flow of space, a space tunnel that can drag living forms into it and teleport them somewhere else, said Han Ji slowly. Everyone climbed up to the observation tower. There was indeed a silver vortex spinning in the darkness outside the barrier. The silver vortex continued to drag the undead nearby into it. The undead that fell into it simply went missing. When the silver vortex disappeared, a huge clear space was left behind. Where did the undead go? Said Elder Chu Jia of the Hunter Union. The silver vortex had only lasted for a short period. However, it had easily sucked around 2,000 undead away. Although the number was nothing compared to the size of the undead army, it was still a strange phenomenon. So, can we still see how they are doing? Du Xiao was more concerned about Mo Fan and the others. They had proceeded onto the 9 bridges of death and 1 bridge of life. There were no copper mirrors on the bridges, so they had no clue what the youngsters were up to. I think so. The wicked eye copper mirrors in the tomb are possessed by souls. They will follow intruders around. The copper mirror before has already flown toward the bridge that Mo Fan and his crew picked. I believe we can. It's showing something, look. Blurted out Xi Sang. Xi Sang's copper mirror was showing a slightly curved land. Observing the place from high above, it felt like they could see the whole land. Look, what's that? Silver. A silver vortex. The people were stunned. The same silver vortex that had appeared outside of the city had also appeared in the space. Most shockingly, the undead that it had dragged away were now pouring down like raindrops, landing on the curved land. What the hell is going on? Everyone was trying to make sense of this. They soon discovered Mo Fan, Zhang Xiaoho, Lu Ru, and Su Xiaoluo on the ground, looking fairly tiny from their viewpoint. Initially, they were the only ones on the spacious land, but as the undead poured down like raindrops, the place was suddenly filled with a sinister atmosphere. I'm afraid they have picked the bridge of death. They are now in the space of death. Xi Sang stated glumly. If they had chosen the right bridge, it would have led them straight to the altar. However, they had fallen into a unique space, implying that they had chosen the wrong bridge. Space of death. The people who entered it had no chance of surviving. Does that mean they're trapped in there? Asked Yao Nan. A unique space must have an entrance and an exit, otherwise it would just be a dead space that's impossible to enter. The space isn't huge, roughly the size of the inner city, and there's nothing else in there. It won't be hard to find the exit, but the silver vortex has suddenly brought around 2,000 undead into the space, which are going to kill them, said Han Ji. I could easily kill 2,000 undead if I were there. Humph. I already said that they should have split up and picked a bridge each. Look what happened. They have ended up in the space of death. How can these little kids handle 2,000 undead? Harumphed Chu Jia in exasperation. I think they can handle around 2,000 undead still, said Yao Nan. I agree. Mo Fan's strength isn't comparable to that of an ordinary intermediate magician, said Zhao Feng. How can an intermediate magician face 2,000 undead at once? Do you think I'm stupid? Chu Jia no longer had any hope. He seemed to be fretting. The mysterious man and Han Ji both had stern looks on their faces. They felt hopeless after learning that the group had arrived in the space of death, not to mention that the undead were about to end their lives. Chief Xe, does this mean the bridges of death aren't really that terrifying? If they have an advanced magician among them, wouldn't they be able to handle the undead easily? Asked Elder Ling Shi. She too felt that it was unreliable to place the fate of the city in the hands of a few young magicians. The situation would be totally different if a super or advanced magician was with them. No, that isn't the case. Describing something as weak or strong is actually subjective. The dangerous places that people are referring to will never pose a threat to strong magicians. However, in the case of the ancient king's tomb, even a forbidden magician can't be sure that he could enter the place safely. The reason is, according to the rules that the ancient king set, the difficulty of the situation is adjusted based on the capabilities of the candidates. Although you are only seeing a few thousand undead in the space of death now, it is only because their strength isn't high. However, if you were the ones inside the space of death, the levels and number of the undead would increase significantly. Said Xe Sang. Most people in the tower were super magicians. They were more knowledgeable than Xe Sang, hence they immediately understood the situation when they heard his explanation. It seems like the ancient king isn't only the founder of the undead element and an expert of the space element, he's also an expert of the chaos element. I can't even imagine how many resources he spent constructing the tomb. But I have to say that I'm impressed by his intelligence. Even though the tomb was built more than 2,000 years ago, an aged scholar spoke up. Only the chaos element could achieve the things that Xe Sang had mentioned. Among the dimensional magic elements, the space element was the strongest. The summoning element was the most diverse, the music element was primarily used for support and harassment, and the chaos element was the eeriest and most unpredictable. These dimensional magic elements were difficult to understand, let alone the complicated chaos element. However, they were confident that the ancient king was an expert with the chaos element, too. Around 2,000 undead, hopefully they can make it, said Han Ji. I feel like these undead are only just the beginning. Even though the group's strength isn't outstanding, they're still in the space of death. There's simply no chance for them to survive, added Xe Sang. Everyone fell silent upon hearing Xe Sang's words. Han Ji subconsciously glanced at the inner city beset by the calamity. His eyes were losing hope. Chapter N. Versatile Mage. Chapter 669. The living path is cleared by killing. The rain had lasted for a few days straight. The people in the clock tower were already silent, overwhelmed by the sorrow of finding the group in the space of death, and now yet another devastating news had come. Half of the army is dead, only a few from the 3 hunter squads are alive, the Imperial magicians are trapped by the mountain zombie there, an Imperial magician reported. Sigh, so many are dead, but we still picked the bridge of death. Ling Shi shook her head when she heard the news. We should have just fought with all we had. Maybe we could have survived until morning. We still don't know if the Dark Abyss is going to shift into the inner city. Maybe the Black Vatican is just trying to trick us. Now that we've lost so many people, we won't have a chance to defend the inner city, said Chu Jia. Don't you think it's meaningless to say something like that now? We're only in this situation because we've underestimated the Black Vatican. You should say that if the Magic Association, Hunter Union, and all renowned clans had worked together to eliminate the Black Vatican, a disaster like this wouldn't even happen. I don't think the Black Vatican is fooling us. The Dark Abyss is going to drift into the city. We already know that the Imperial tomb is under the Dark Abyss. It's the fortunate among all unfortunates. I can already feel death closing in, responded Du Xiao, who seemed to have a grudge against Chu Jia. Chu Jia did not feel pleasant upon hearing the words. As he was about to respond, Du Xiao was already not in the mood to quarrel further. He walked to the edge and summoned a pair of wings. The wings had an obvious tear on them. It was clear he had been injured before. What are you doing? Asked Chu Jia immediately. I'm well rested. I'll go and save more people. Du Xiao beat his wings and leapt into the air. He was extremely quick. The rain nearby was swept away as the wings beat. Not long after, Du Xiao had already vanished into the distance. The space of death. The silver vortex finally disappeared. No more undead were falling from the sky. However, the broad area was now crowded with lots of ugly creatures. Su Xiaoluo and Lu Ru both had extremely pale faces. They had witnessed the enormous undead army up close and even cleared a spectacular path to reach the dark abyss. However, they had been escorted by an army of powerful magicians, and now, there were only 4 of them in the space. 4. Just 4. Zhang Xiaohou was an intermediate magician. Mo Fan had just leveled up to the advanced level, but he still could not cast advanced spells as he had yet to learn how to construct a star constellation. The breakthrough had only granted him a greater supply of energy. There was no way they could handle so many undead. Brother Fan, Zhang Xiaohu's forehead was covered in sweat. The number of undead had exceeded his imagination. It was far more than the number he had encountered at Xianqi. The 2,000 undead could easily combine into a great tide and devour the 4 of them. Swift Star Wolf, Little Flame Bell, come out here. Mo Fan immediately drew the star orbits and star pattern of the summoning element. Him summoning the 2 creatures instantly implied that he was in a grim situation. He had to try his very best. The Swift Star Wolf soon appeared beside Mo Fan. Its hair was drifting in the wind from the phantom gusts and undead breath. White fangs poked out from the wolf's lips, almost reaching its lower jaw. Protect them, Mo Fan told the Swift Star Wolf. Lu Ru was fine on her own. Her close combat strength was a lot higher than the Swift Star Wolf, but Su Xiaoluo desperately needed protection. She was a poison magician, and her cultivation was not too high either. She had spent most of her time on herbs and refining potions. When Zhang Xiaohou saw that Mo Fan was not talking nonsense anymore, he knew his friend was being utterly serious. The number of undead was too overwhelming. If anything, the only fortune they had was the fact that Mo Fan had just progressed into an advanced fire magician. Little Flame Bell, stay close to Zhang Xiaohou, said Mo Fan to the little flame bell floating beside him. Brother Fan, I do as I say, said Mo Fan in a deep voice. Zhang Xiaohou opened his mouth, but he did not say a word. They are here. Lu Ru lowered her voice too. The space was not huge. The undead soon caught the smell of living humans. They let out ghastly starving cries, and their stiff movements suddenly turned into sprinting, like refugees running toward food. The zombies were the greediest, running at the front of the pack. The sturdy ground began to crack under their heavy steps. Mo Fan took a deep breath. His right fist was already burning with a blazing red flame. The fang-shaped flame swayed slightly in the wind. He stood there waiting for the zombies to enter the range of his fiery fist. This is the space of death. Are we going to die here? Su Xiaoluo almost bit her lips. She blurted out cowardly, space of death. They were in the space of death. There were so many undead, and only the 4 of them. They were going to die. The people in the city were going to die too. They still could not escape their fate. Everyone would die before dawn. Their blood splashed across the ground would be that maniac Salon's red carpet. The living path isn't cleared by walking on it, but killing. Mo Fan did not turn his head, directing the words at Su Xiaoluo, who had the urge to give up. Fiery fist. The light of the fire flickered. Mo Fan launched the flame on his fist with a blast. 9 fiery dragons flew across the grey land and rammed into the pack of zombies running at the front while wriggling their fiery bodies. Around 60 zombies were running at the front of the pack, the fastest among them. The zombies agilely leapt aside when the fiery dragons lunged at them, dodging Mo Fan's fiery fist. However, the fiery dragons were not just dumbly flying forward. The flames emitted from their bodies were extremely hot. The little sparks alone were enough to set the zombies aflame once they made contact with their bodies. The strength of the fiery fist, 9 dragons, was overwhelming, not to mention its wide coverage. The 60 agile zombies were completely devoured by the flames with no chance of escaping, burned into black ash and blown into the air. Mo Fan stepped forward and drew the next star pattern. The army of magicians had cleared a path to the dark abyss in the ocean of undead. This time, it was his turn to clear a living path in this space of death. Chapter N. Versatile Mage. Chapter 670. Advanced Level Transformation. The black ash blown into the air slowly dissipated. Mo Fan subconsciously took a deep breath. The number of undead eliminated by a single cast of Fiery Fist was nowhere near the total number of undead, but that did not mean Mo Fan would stand there waiting for his death. Perfect timing. Time to kill at will. It had taken him great effort just to reach the advanced level. Mo Fan charged at the undead at full speed. The number of undead was too deadly for the people behind him. Mo Fan did not want them to get any closer to his crew. As such, he had no choice but to step forward to stop the tide of undead. Zhang Xiaohe was shocked when he saw Mo Fan charging into the undead. Mo Fan's speed was extremely quick even without the aid of any spell. He was as fast as someone under the effect of the basic spell Wind Track. Upon leveling up to the advanced level, not only was his mind strengthened, his physical attributes improved dramatically too. This was also the reason why advanced magicians did not only fight commander-level creatures from a distance, they were not at a disadvantage in close combat either. Mo Fan had clearly sensed the difference. The physical buffs provided by his nebula were almost negligible. He had to rely on spells most of the time. Without magic, he was only an ordinary human, slightly more agile than average. However, the advanced level was a different story. The physical attributes of an advanced magician were entirely different from the intermediate level. The jumping, sprinting, dodging, and reaction times were comparable to lower-level demon creatures. Even when jumping right into a pack of demon creatures, it did not necessarily mean the magician would have trouble surviving. Mo Fan had already felt it in the hall. The fire nebula had further strengthened his flesh. Therefore, he had decided to kill the undead as sacrifices for his recent level up. Flipping his hands simultaneously, two bright flames burst alive on his palms. Mo Fan basically finished the two fire bursts in an instant. In terms of speed and reflexes, Mo Fan was faster than the servant class undead. He quickly weaved past two poisonous zombies like a sparrow gliding through the woods and slammed the fire bursts on his hands onto their bodies. Leaving the flames behind, Mo Fan had already moved a few meters away. With a thought, the two fire bursts on the zombies exploded instantly. It was too easy to kill two servant-class zombies instantly with the 4th-tier fire burst. In fact, if two undead were standing closely together, a single fire burst would be enough to send them both to hell. Oh. Wait, they were already there. The two fire bursts exploded behind Mo Fan, staggering the skeletons that were following him. Mo Fan did not bother wasting his time on the skeletons. His gaze was fixed on a strong presence that he had sensed. It was a skeleton general. It was only as tall as a 10-year-old kid, thus easy to disregard. Mo Fan would have had a hard time noticing the skeleton before, but he was now an advanced magician. His strong will was able to detect the presence of stronger creatures among the undead almost instantly. Giant Shadow Spike. Mo Fan straightaway charged toward the skeleton general with black energy circling around his finger. As Mo Fan shot the black energy forward, it turned into a flickering cold spike, punching into the skeleton general, which thought it had concealed its presence well. The skeleton general was only a small warrior-level creature, its strength nowhere near the Hatchet Corpse general. The giant shadow spike completely sealed off its movements, nailing the creature to the spot. It could not even move its fingers, let alone break free. As soon as Mo Fan had the skeleton general under control, 8 skeletons with white bone sabers appeared on both sides. Their hands had transformed into bone sabers to cut anything in their path. 2 were swung at Mo Fan's head, 3 were slashing at his chest, and the rest were aiming at his limbs. Mo Fan was planning to eliminate the tiny skeleton general in one go. His eyes flickered coldly when he discovered the guards trying to protect the general. His pupils glowed purple, the energy of lightning. His arms were wrapped in arcs of lightning as electrical discharges surrounded him, producing crackling noises. Lightning strike. The lightning arcs spread out and quickly filled the area within 20 meters of Mo Fan like eels, turning the place into an electric field. The 8 skeletons had already raised their bone sabers, yet their speed was no match for the lightning. The paralyzing effect immediately nullified their attacks. The lightning element was indeed overwhelming. Most of the time, Mo Fan subconsciously used Lightning Strike as a control spell to secure a safe space around him. After all, nothing could compare to its paralyzing effect. On top of that, its damage was also impressive. 4 of the 8 skeletons were killed instantly. Among the basic spells, only the lightning element possessed such strength. The wind started blowing. It grew from a breeze to a green slashing tornado right behind Mo Fan. The wind dragged the skeletons and undead following behind him into the air and tore them into pieces. Blood and pieces of bones were scattered across the place. Mo Fan knew it was Zhang Xiaohu's attack without needing to turn his head. The enemies behind him were eliminated, allowing him to focus on killing the impaired skeleton general. The warrior-level creatures posed the biggest threat to the group. They would hide among the other undead and ambush them. Those without outstanding defensive equipment would be killed by a single blow. Die. Mo Fan walked up to the skeleton general and threw a fist at its shiny, smooth skull. The fist burst into flames as he launched it. When it landed on the skeleton general's face, flames like lava burst forward. The impaired skeleton general was knocked 50 meters away. His path had other skeletons along it as well. They were devoured by the flames of the fiery fist. It was obvious that the tiny skeleton general was not very strong. The explosion produced by the fiery fist, exploding heaven right in its face, was enough to kill it. However, at the place where the skeleton general's bones landed in pieces, a 2-faced phantom 10 meters tall uttered an enraged roar. 10 meters, the height of a 3-story building. Its presence and aura were far stronger than the skeleton general's. Even their faces were hurt from the wind produced by the roar. Chapter end. Please guys like, comment, share, and subscribe.